and welcome to Cherry Pie Math. This video is going to introduce statistics and introduce population and sample and why we would do sampling. So a scenario you've probably come across to introduce statistics is you might have, maybe you're deciding where to go for dinner and your mom wants to go get Korean food, your dad wants to go get Mexican food. The kids honestly just don't care, they just want to eat. How would you decide where to go? So there's a lot of different kinds of answers. Like maybe you take a vote. That's something you might do. That's something my family would often do. And then, my mom would have veto power and we would end up getting Korean food anyway. Or if it was me and my husband, for example, we sometimes do like rock, paper, scissors to see where we're going to go for dinner. Or, I don't know, maybe you just do names out of a hat. Or, yeah, do out of a hat kind of a thing. There's a lot of different ways you might have decided where to go. And these kind of introduce a way you would do statistics. Voting is a very popular thing that within the realm of statistics because you're kind of seeing people's opinions. But these over here are more like random chances, like if it was just 50-50. And so statistics is, let's write the definition of statistics. So statistics is the branch of mathematics that collects / organizes / analyzes, this should be a Z, / interprets data. And so statistics is kind of a weird one because it is with numbers and you do use math with it. There is a lot of debate whether or not it should be its own thing or whether it's under the umbrella of mathematics, just because it's really different to everything you've done so far this year, or in every other mathematics class anyway, where like a lot of what you think of when you think of math is you think of algebra, you might think of geometry, and statistics is just a different beast. Like a lot of people that use statistics aren't really they don't have to take proof classes or whatever because they're focused on that data, on interpreting that data. What does that data even mean? And so, but you've probably seen it. You might have done like pie charts back in like elementary school where you're like, this much is to this part or whatever. You might have seen like approval ratings. So this one I just got off the internet there. Gallup is a very popular agency for collecting that kind of data, and you'll often see them in relation to like presidential polls. This is called a bell curve. You will see this a lot more in statistics specific classes, because it represents kind of the general pattern of statistics. Like most people fall within like a certain range, and then there's like outliers on both sides. But you've seen statistics, you've probably used statistics, even if you didn't know the word for what you were doing, like when you were voting for where to go for dinner, for example. We need statistics because, for a few reasons, but we need to kind of see what the general pattern of a population is. And I say population because it doesn't have to be like people will often use statistics with people, but you'll also use statistics with not people. Like maybe you work at like a factory and you want to make sure that all of your products are about the same weight. You would be using statistics because you're collecting data. Anytime you're collecting data and analyzing it and interpreting it, that's statistics, regardless of what the population is. So let's go to that word, population. What does that mean? Usually when you hear the word population, you think of the amount of people in like a city or in a country. A population in statistics is the group that is affected by the data, or like who the data is about. So, like, it could be the population of the United States, or it could be, the population could be, like, in the factory example, it would be that product. That product would be the population. When we do our surveys, though, it's not super realistic to ask everybody. It's pretty impossible to ask everyone. Right? Like, the city I'm in now has like 120,000 people, and if I wanted to survey all of them, I'd have to hunt them all down. I'd have to see where they work. I'd have to know what they live, like what their ages were. Like, it's just impossible. And then you imagine doing that on a huge scale. Like, yes, they send out censuses. I don't actually know the word for plural of census, but they do a census every so often, right? And even then, it doesn't cover everybody. Not everybody's going to get that in the mail. So the sample is the portion of the population we survey. Survey meaning that's either, if it's people, that's who we ask the questions to. If it's just data, then it's the, like, in the factory example, let's say it's like every 10th item that comes off the line, for example. Sampling is the process of determining, actually, I'm going to erase that. Sampling is the process of asking and determining yeah, I spelled that right. The sample of the population. Basically meaning, that's a really poor way to write it, but let me just explain what I mean. So it basically means like, how would you determine who you're going to ask? Like, what is the most effective way to do it? Because, like we said, you can't ask everybody, so maybe you draw, like, 6 names out of a hat or something, I don't know. But, like, it's determining who to ask or which data points to collect, and then using that data to basically reflect on the rest of the population. So, for example, let's look at these 4 and talk about the population versus the sample. These 4 I chose because the population can be different. Depending on what population you're looking at, that's going to determine your sample. So favorite movie, that's super broad. Who am I asking? Who is this going to affect? Do I care about the entire earth, or do I just care about, like, the city I live in, or just a school even? So let's say my population is, I'm going to say Americans. I can't ask everyone in the United States, so my sample would be, maybe I ask, like, 1 person in each state, or I ask 6 people in each state. And then I determine the favorite movie based on that. Because my population is the entire United States, I don't want to just focus on, like, 6 people I found off the street here, because one state would have different preferences than another state probably. So in order to reflect the entire population, I need a little bit from each part of the population to get that general idea, because I am using this information to generalize. It's not an exact science. Statistics is a lot of, like, there's variation and there's some generalizations, but if you do it right, if you're random and you kind of cover all your bases, it does reflect usually the entire population. So teenage height, obviously this is not going to be all Americans, because not all Americans are teenagers. So my population, we'll just say, are North American teenagers. And then my sample, maybe I pick, maybe I'll stick with the 6 people, 6 teens, I guess, in each state and province, because we're including Canada here and Mexico. who people like for president. My population. Let's change it up a little bit. Let's say I was in high school and I'm doing like a project on who people would like for president. So my population would be teenagers at my high school. And then my sample, let's say I would pick every 10th person in the cafeteria at lunchtime, which would randomize it, because you wouldn't be asking like everyone from the same club, for example. Like if you asked everyone in a sports team, their answer might be different than everyone in the drama club, for example. Or I don't know, like band versus crochet club, if that's a thing. I don't know. But depending on the club, like people with similar interests will often gather together. But if you want to have that general idea of everyone in the high school, then you want to ask a little bit of everybody, right? How fast ice cream melts. My population would be ice cream brands. Or it could be flavors of ice cream, I don't know, of a specific brand. And so my sample, in this case, since my population is ice cream brands, I'm going to take one ice cream from each brand at my store, for example. So you can kind of get this idea of population is who is this information really concerning, and then my sample is how do I reflect that entire population at a more manageable level of asking. It is very important that your sampling is random. To be random means that every data point has an equal chance of being selected. Because like I said with the whole clubs example, that's not really reflecting your entire population. So the randomness helps to ensure that you're really just taking whoever it is, and that way you can reflect it over a wider, broader population, I guess. So it's important to be random in our sampling to ensure the least amount of bias is what we call it. So bias is kind of like, you've probably heard that word before. It means leaning an opinion one way. So like if my population, or let's say my survey question was, are sports cool or not? And I only asked the basketball team, they're all going to obviously say that sports are cool, right? But if you ask, like my husband, for example, he probably would not be as excited to play sports. And he'd be bigger into like, I don't know, video games, I don't know. But if you want to ensure that there's less bias, if you want people to be less biased as a whole, because everyone is inherently biased in their opinions, because everyone has opinions. But in statistics, you want to be as impartial as you can. And so you are as random as you can so that you get everybody's opinions, and then that way you're able to reflect it over a bigger population. So some things to remember: sampling must be random to be effective. Use a sample instead of a population because we can't ask everybody in a population. That's pretty much impossible most of the time. And statistics helps us find patterns for real world behaviors. It's not a guarantee, but it does help us be able to predict about behaviors in real life. Anyway, I hope that helps you get introduced to statistics, and good luck.